Hello everybody. So I wanted to take a few minutes today to talk about exercise during pregnancy. I've definitely touched on this many times in different ways through different social media posts. I am on my third pregnancy. At this point I am almost 18 weeks and I exercise 5 to 6 days a week, and that has been the same first, second, and third pregnancy. But one of the questions that I often hear, I see people post about on other fitness pages about pregnancy, and have asked me is, well, I'm pregnant, now what can I do to stay active? And that's going to vary depending on who you are, what the state of your current health is, and what you've been doing prior to becoming pregnant. So one of the things that they tell you now, your doctor tells you, is that you can continue doing whatever it is you've been doing. So if you, let's say we're taking 3 cycling classes a week and doing 2 group fitness classes or strength training on your own twice a week, then you can continue to do that. To jump from, let's say, 3 cycling classes to 5, or 2 strength days a week to 5, would definitely not be recommended, because you're going to have to start tapering, not increasing your volume and your intensity through a pregnancy. So some people, I think, also want to start from 0 and go to 100. They think like, well, I haven't been active, but I can start running now that I'm pregnant so that I don't gain a bunch of weight. And that's actually not the best idea. Running is a basic movement, but running is actually very technical and mechanical, and a lot of it's a cyclitic exercise also, which means you're using the same muscle groups over and over again. Walking is fine because it's lower impact, but there's a lot of impact on your joints too with running. And so if your body's not ready for that impact, whether you're pregnant or not, really, but if your body's not ready for that impact, especially pregnant, it's going to negatively have an effect, most likely, on probably your hips, especially when you're pregnant. Your hips get very tight. They also are loose at the same time. So your ligaments and everything are loosening, but then, if you don't properly stretch them, they're gonna feel tighter because things are moving around and your pelvic is, opening up, preparing for labor and delivery. So there's just a lot of factors that go into starting something new when you become pregnant. There are things that are definitely safe that most trainers recommend, like yoga. Yoga's a safe, for the most part, safe. Hot yoga, not so safe. If you've been doing hot yoga, you might be able to continue doing it for a little while, but at some point, probably after your first trimester, you're probably not going to be able to do hot yoga anymore, just because the heat of the room is going to be too much. And you don't want your body to overheat. Remember, you are cooking a baby right now, right? And that's the same reason that you don't want to go in hot tubs when you're pregnant. So yoga is fairly safe. Pilates movements, a lot of them are safe, or like bar type workouts, but keep in mind that there's also a lot of isolated core work in those workouts, and you're not going to be able to really do those pretty much past your first trimester. It's just not that safe, and then you have more of a chance of diastasis recti. I have had diastasis recti all 3 pregnancies. I even had it immediately in my first pregnancy. I was like 10 weeks and I noticed a bulge in my stomach, and I had like barely even popped at all. Like you couldn't even tell I was pregnant at all, and I had already separated. But that's my body. Some women, abs never separate, but your chances of separation are going to be greater if you do isolated core movements. So Pilates does involve a lot of that. So that's why I don't really always recommend Pilates, but you can do a lot of the leg movements and the upper body movements and Pilates or bar workouts, right? Because they're safe, it's lighter weights, higher reps. So if you weren't exercising, that's the safest route to go. And yes, strength training's probably the safest place to go if you want to become active. You just probably have to stay with lighter weights. This isn't the time to be like, oh, I'm gonna gain strength in pregnancy. You might gain a little bit, but you're not going to make huge strength gains or make huge muscle mass gains during pregnancy. Your body is putting too much effort into making a baby. It doesn't want to grow your muscles right now. That's not your body's priority, whether you like it or not. And then cardiovascularly, walking is the safest. Cycling on a stationary bike is safe if you weren't doing it, but don't expect to go show up at an intense cycling class or go to Flywheel or go to SoulCycle or go to your Lifetime and go take an intense spin class when you weren't doing it and then do it pregnant. It's not going to work out. You're probably going to either overdo it or you won't make it through the class. Especially because you have a lot of heart rate changes, you have a lot of body temperature changes. Your heart rate's not able to get as high when you're pregnant either, so if you weren't already training your heart rate, you're definitely not going to be able to get it to a point where you're going to it would even be effective for you to take that class. So keep those things in mind. It's really also really important to focus more on just being active in general. You don't necessarily have to go crazy. I know some people, because they see some of us fitness professionals do crazy workouts still pregnant. It's also because we've been doing them for our whole lives. I've been active since I was 5, so my whole life. I was a dancer and an athlete my whole life, and then I started in fitness immediately when I got to college. So I've been doing these types of exercises and doing these movements over a decade before I even got pregnant for the first time. And so I've continued to do it, and so my body continues to do it. But I also still taper. So I'm already starting to taper at almost halfway point. If you start watching my workouts now, my live workouts, I've already dropped weight for some things. I've already, already take some of the modifications for the plyometric movements and the cardio movements. So I'm already in the tapering mode for sure. Because obviously the bigger that you get, the more body weight you have on your body. Also, the more impact on your joints. The harder it is cardiovascularly, because now instead of me being 15 pounds lighter, I'm about 10 pounds heavier right now. I've just added 10 pounds. So doing a squat jump right now is going to be a lot harder for me than it was, let's say, 10 weeks ago when I barely had gained any weight yet. And it's also different on my joints, right? Like I've just gained 10 pounds in, let's say, 10 weeks. My joints aren't necessarily ready for the same load of impact as they were before I got pregnant, before I gained weight. Same reason when people gain weight. So if you've gained a lot of weight, let's say you're not pregnant, but you've gained 10, 15, 20 pounds in maybe even 3, 5, 6 months time span, or maybe even over a year. And if you weren't active and then you go back to being active, your body's going to be shocked because your joints aren't used to that load in that intensity realm. So you have to keep all those things in mind too in pregnancy. And so that's why I do also recommend that plyometric movements are not something that you do pregnant if you have not already been doing it. And you are going to have to taper that down. Eventually I won't be doing plyometric movements. My feet might leave the floor a little bit, but the intensity level is definitely going to decrease significantly. So along all those lines, you definitely are going to see advertisements for fit pregnancy workouts. And I'm not against being active, obviously, when you're pregnant. But I probably will never put out a fit pregnancy program. You cannot give the same prescription to everybody for pregnancy. It's just too difficult to classify everybody as the same. It would have to have the same disclaimer that if you've been doing X, Y, and Z for X, Y, and Z time, you could do this program, which is going to cut out 75 to 90% of a population that's pregnant. Because, we have a hard enough time getting people to work out all year round, anybody in general, working in a gym. So, if you're consistent working out, that's number one. So if you want to get pregnant, let's say, the first thing I would tell you to do is to consistently start working out for 4, 5, 6 days a week for 3, 6, 9 months before you can get pregnant. That way you can stay active during pregnancy. Otherwise your chances are just going to be really minimal. So because I've seen a huge influx in these fit pregnancy programs, I wanted to put this video out today because I don't want anyone to jump into one of those programs, end up injured, or end up in a situation where their whole body hurts. Because being able to move in pregnancy is more important than anything else. You know, you're already gonna have aches and pains when you get out of bed in the morning when you're pregnant. Like, no matter if you're active or inactive, you know, things are moving and adjusting on a daily basis. Your body is changing. If not daily, it's changing every single week. And sometimes it's drastic changes. You know, 1 week it might be a small change from, let's say, week 16 to week 17, but then sometimes week 17 to 18 feels like a huge drastic change happened. You know, whether it be, you know, you either popped more or you gained 3 pounds and you hadn't gained any weight in the last few weeks. Or something all of a sudden feels super tight that you have a pain that you didn't have before, or all of a sudden you have a knee pain that wasn't there 2 days ago and that then stays for your entire pregnancy. Or all of a sudden you get plantar fasciitis. Like, all these different things can just all of a sudden pop up in pregnancy because your body is changing. This is the most change you're ever going to have as a female, probably in a short period of time. And so just being active is number one. And if you really want to be active, just take a workout that you like and modify the whole thing, right? And keep it modified unless you feel like, oh, my body's recovering, I'm good the next day, you know, so maybe tomorrow I can actually add weight to that squat. You know, don't recommend adding a 20-pound kettlebell if you were doing body weight, but maybe you add a 5-pound dumbbell, sure. But you just want to be really smart about that. It's better to focus on your body after you've had a baby. No, I will never put out a fit pregnancy program. I may put out something postpartum related, but even that is going to have a lot of variations, because if you had a C-section or if you had a natural birth, that all varies the recovery times. And if you were active before, and then and then after labor and delivery, if you were active before, if you weren't, that's going to change your recovery after delivery. So there's just so many variables here. The best thing to do too is to, if you really need something, to reach out to somebody that's qualified, a fitness professional that's qualified, and that probably has experience being pregnant, that could make you something specifically for you to stay active in it and be ready, because it might just be walk 3 times a week, and it might be a very small, you know, body weight circuit that you do twice a week. That might be where you start. So if you have any questions about this, please know that you can reach out to me, you can ask. This is definitely something that I feel passionate about. It's just not something that I talk a whole lot about in terms of what you can do pregnant, because it's just so individual. So comments, feedback, questions, definitely always up for it. Thanks.